my friend and sometimes a contributor here, contributes when we ask him to. Certainly, Austin Barbour of the Clearwater Group, among other ventures, kind enough to join us today. This is going to be a political conversation. So if politics triggers you, this is not going to be the one for you. So feel free to hit the pause button or the stop button or the next button. But we're going to talk politics. We're going to do it though in a way that I think will be interesting because Austin and I, believe it or not, sort of share some similar views about just the vitriol in today's politics. So we're going to talk about that first. Austin, thanks for spending some time with us. How are you?
I'm great, Neil. As always, always look forward to having a good conversation with you. And thanks for having me. I should comment how great you look, man. You're just
What's very
looking like
nice of you.
you're ready for the Rocky Balboa fight. You will be a somebody that can maybe get me inspired to go lose 15 or 20 pounds because you look great.
Well, Creed 3 is coming out soon, so you can never get too ready too soon for.
Are you going to fight Creed 3? Are you going to fight Creed in this?
I
Okay,
can't
good.
I can't reveal exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
I do have a fight club membership, and we do have a boxing thing in our garage. So maybe I'm getting ready for Adonis Creed.
I would
Does
probably break my wrist if I did something like that after one hit, but whatever.
you guys? That's why they give you the wrist wraps.
Oh, there
Um,
you go.
uh, I guess we'll start here. How did your first of all? How did your son's soccer season go? Are they still going?
Yeah, they're still going. He's at Jackson Academy and MAIS is a couple of weeks behind public school soccer. So they are headed into the playoffs. If they win Thursday, tomorrow night, they'll be the number 2 seed behind Prep. Prep is really good. Jackson Prep ranked number 3 in the country, I saw. So we were, you'll appreciate this. There's a big rivalry and with JA and Prep, and we played them Saturday at Prep and got up 2-1 in overtime and ended up losing 3-2.
Oh,
But it's brutal. But he's enjoying it. He's loves soccer just like Carson does. And I was thinking about this because I was hoping that we were going to talk a little soccer. To add a little diversity to our conversation here. When I grew up in Yazoo City, it wasn't soccer. When you grew up in the 70s and early 80s, I doubt there was any soccer in Louisiana.
there was no soccer at all. There was the YMCA, which was just kind of like ruleless soccer.
Yeah.
Like I don't even remember how old I was. I did it 1 year because I remember we played at Hillcrest Elementary School. So I was probably in upper elementary. So they weren't even calling offsides, or we didn't know what anything was. There was no coaching. We didn't know. We just kicked the ball down the field and tried to put it in the net. And the only soccer that we were even exposed to, you'll remember this, because you're younger than me, but you're not so much younger than me that you won't remember. And I think you have a brother who's my age. There was ABC Wide World of Sports on Saturday afternoons. Once the football season ended and they were looking for programming. And I remember Pele playing for the New York Cosmos and it being a big deal. And that's literally the extent of what I knew about soccer. Hell, if I'm honest, prior to like Carson getting into it.
Yeah. My first experience of soccer was my mother wanted me to go to Catholic school. So I went to Catholic school for 1 year in the 8th grade. I had to drive to Jackson and go to Catholic school. And it was in Jackson. And all those boys played soccer. Now, you have the traditional sports too. And they put me in the goal. I was big and athletic, but that was the extent of my soccer career until my son was 3 and 4 and then my daughter behind it. And they both played soccer just like Carson did. I don't know if your girls played soccer at Oxford, but
They did.
yeah. But I make the point because if you're a young parent listening to this and you've got kids that are starting to care about sports or you want them to play sports and they're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, man, get them in soccer. It is such a great sport. It helped both of my kids become better athletes, become better at the other sports they played, whether it was basketball or football. It is. I didn't know a dadgum thing about it, and of course, I coached both my kids the whole way through until they wouldn't let dads coach anymore. But it's just such a great sport, and I love watching it, and I love watching them continue to play.
There's a bunch of good teams down where you are. I can tell you that.
Clinton's
Man,
ridiculous.
Clinton's crazy good. I said this the other day. It's the best high school team I've ever seen. And someone said, best high school soccer team. I said, no, I said best high school team I've ever seen. And
Wow.
they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I mean anything. I've never seen a team that well drilled, that well coached, their communication skills. And you're sitting in the stands, it's cold, and the wind was blowing that night. And my son's team's getting his butt kicked, getting its collective butt kicked. And they're playing fairly well, and they're getting their butt kicked. And they were just the way they communicated. To Carson's credit, he went home with his teammates, and they stopped someplace in Madison, I think, and got a late dinner and got back. And by the time he pulled into the house, into the driveway, it was 12:30. And I got up and went in there, and he came in and he goes, "They were really good." And I said, "Yeah, they're really good, bud. I mean, there's no shame in losing to that team." And he goes, "But I mean, they set the standard, right? I mean, that's." I said, "Yeah, you're not going to play a team better than that ever. I mean, I don't think. I mean, if there's a team better than that, you don't want to play them." And I said, "But yeah, that's the standard. That's what you have to try to catch. If you want to be a state championship contending team, you've got to meet them on so many levels, completely across the board, right?" And uh, I don't think Tyler would mind me saying this. I got a message from Tyler Wade, the coach at Clinton, the next day, just complimenting the Oxford kids and complimenting Carson, which was incredibly classy on his part. But yeah, it was how well drilled they were, and to see Brandon only lose 2-1. I was like, well, we didn't see Brandon this year, but I go out on a limb and say they must be pretty damn good. There's a lot of really good soccer there, which is,
Yeah.
I've said this, and this is not a political comment, but I firmly believe this. If it were not for Title IX, I think you would see a lot of schools around this part of the country start to go, you know what? We probably need to get ahead of the curve here and get started with the men's soccer program, because there is zero doubt in my mind that 20 years from now, 30 years from now, SEC schools will have scholarship SEC soccer programs, men's soccer programs.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be that long. But the Clinton soccer programs, and of course their girls won state championship Saturday night. So they won with boys and girls. Both of my kids play club at Bria Soccer Club, which is based in Clinton. So my son played with a lot of those boys. They're so freaking good. My daughter played with a lot of the girls on the high school team. Clinton is a great town, great community, very community oriented. But man, they are really, really into soccer, and they have been for this is their. A lot of those boys on that team are second generation soccer
Yeah.
players. I'm sure you saw that story where their dads won a state championship 25 years or so ago. It's really cool.
Yeah,
Really
because
cool.
really one of the questions I had before that story was, how the hell this happened? Like, I know he's a good coach and stuff like that, but wow, like
A
they're
lot of
all
those
so
boys,
skilled.
they all played club growing up together. They get to high school, and and they're also exceptional athletes too. So
Yeah.
exceptional soccer players, excuse me. So anyway,
All right, so let's talk some politics. I have yet to see the State of the Union. I've got it recorded to watch. I heard my wife listening to Sarah Sanders, her Republican response to the State of the Union. I heard it in the background. I wasn't paying attention. I was watching basketball. I'd been writing basketball. So for people like me who didn't see the State of the Union, or who chose not to watch it, but have heard that it was kind of rancorous in the chamber at times. I'm assuming, you being the political operative slash junkie slash consumer that you are, I'm assuming you probably did watch it. Give me your thoughts on the speech, and also the way that it was received in the House.
well, I watched it this morning because I was watching your Oklahoma City Thunder play the Lakers. That SGA guy, my gosh, how good is he?
I love him.
And then there's this Australian guy. We're switching to NBA real quick. I'll pivot
Josh
back.
Giddey. No. Hey, look,
I've never seen that guy before. I had OKC doesn't play a lot on television for me, but anyway.
No, that was only their second nationally televised game of the year. They're completely under the radar, and they're not a good team yet, but
I
they're
don't know.
coming. They're
Man,
coming.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I love that Australian guy. I was like, why is he not in late in the fourth? Put him back in. Then he goes back in. That was fantastic.
Josh Giddey's a really good player. Jalen Williams, the one from Santa Clara, is going to be a really good player. And Chet Holmgren is on their roster and is out this year with the foot thing. And Chet's going to come back, and they're going to have a lottery pick. They're going to be a fun team to watch.
Well, the Lakers played into the Oklahoma City Thunder's hand, just like the Republicans last night played into Joe Biden's hands. I will say that. Listen, golly, Neil, when I did watch it this morning because I knew we were going to talk about it, and I wanted to see some of it. You watch Biden come in, he's shaking hands, coming in on the Democrat side, gets up there, gets past a few introductions. And I just tell you, I watched about 3 minutes of him talking after the introductions. I just couldn't watch it. Honestly, I'm not trying to be partisan. I'm trying to be fair and balanced here as best I can. I am a Republican, is what I do for a living. He looks so old.
Well, he is old.
Yep, he is. That's a true fact. But he looks old. There are old people who don't look as old and sound as old as he did. I think that the Republicans made a mistake last night when, instead of just letting Biden get up there, look old, sound old, fumble over some words, get some applause from his side, when you start yelling at him and calling him a liar and all of this stuff, because one thing that dude likes is he likes to fight. Okay. He's pretty good at he's much better at sort of sparring with someone than trying to read a speech off a teleprompter. He just is. So when Republicans started sparring with him, he liked that. He wanted to give it back to them. They played right in his hands. If they'd have sat on their hands and been quiet, it would have been a dud speech. Okay. But instead, they didn't do that. And I think that was a mistake. I shouldn't say they. It wasn't every member, every Republican member in the House and Senate. It was more the ones who like to, do stupid shit like that. And I think
it's the reason. It's the reason, in my opinion, that the Republicans in November, with an opportunity, frankly, just right in front of you, they probably went into that thing as like 26-point favorites if you were to put a number on it. They fumbled. They blew it in November. Yeah, they gained some in the House, but they didn't win the Senate. They should have won the Senate. They didn't. They ran some candidates that were shaky. They had some I don't even know the word that I'm looking for, Austin.
Well, Neil, here's the thing. Okay, Republicans should have made better gains in the House. They're very lucky to just hold on. Okay, and it's an impossible job that Kevin McCarthy fought so hard to win. But he's in the history books. He'll be Speaker of the House for we'll see how long they'll be in the history books. What I saw this morning, and I go to Drudge several times a day. I like Drudge. It's old school. They just throw up the links and you go click on what you want. There's but I saw Gallup poll was at the top left of his website this morning. What was it? It was a 35-50. 35% of Americans feel like they're better off today than they were a year ago. 50% feel like they're worse off today than they were a year ago. Last year it was 41-41. I think the year before it was much better. That's a terrible number for Joe Biden. A terrible number for him. So instead of letting him get up there and give a really boring, old-looking, bad speech, I think Republicans made the vocal, obnoxious Republicans who wanted to spar with him last night got their way, but they gave, I think, Biden probably an overall victory on the night versus at best probably what would have been a draw.
We might jump around a little, but we're going to get back into common themes. So let's stick with Biden for a minute. Here's this guy that is he's 80 years old. He's my parents' age, and you're right. He's not as he doesn't come across as sharp as both of my parents do at this age. And I think my parents would admit to you they're not as sharp at 80 as they were 10 years ago. Just
Sure.
happens, right? Age. Um, if you're a Democrat operative today, you're looking at polling data, you're looking at this guy, and you're trying to figure out in the early stages of the 2024 election cycle, and we're getting close. Is he running again?
He's running again. Listen, I don't watch the Sunday morning shows like we probably used to watch them 10, 15, 20 years ago, but we do see the clips thanks to Twitter. And I saw Donna Brazile. You remember Donna Brazile, who I've
Oh,
always
sure.
thought a pretty smart strategist, made a
Sure.
bunch of money, done a bunch of big things. She was really smart when she said, um, if you're Joe Biden, you don't announce for president now. You announce for president as late as you possibly can in 23, which is probably sometime in the fall. As close to, August, September, maybe even October as you possibly can. October is probably too late. You wait as long as you can. Freeze the field out. Nobody's running. Kamala, the VP hadn't said, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to run against you," or some senator or some governor. I know the governor of California. I just went blank on his name.
Gavin Newsom.
Gavin Newsom is probably the one who was flirting with it the most. But nobody's running against you. Nobody's doing it. So yes, it's a long-winded answer to your question, which is I think Biden is running again. I am shocked. I said a million times before, there's no way because he not only is 80, he looks 80 plus. How can you campaign? So by the time the election's here, he's going to be 81, 82 years old.
82.
Man, that's tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I think I think as of now he's running unless something happens with his health. And then can't control that.
Do you think? I'm asking you to speculate.
Yep.
It's probably not what you love to do, but I'll do it for you, and you can tell me I'm an idiot. I thought when they ran Harris as his running mate back in 2020 that it was kind of this plan, right? That he would run, he would get elected. A couple years in, he would probably announce that either he was not going to run for reelection or maybe even step down. She would become president or she would become the face of the party. But for as bad as sometimes his numbers are, hers are always consistently worse. I mean, she's been a disaster of a vice president from a public standpoint. I'm not saying she's a terrible person or that she's an idiot or any of those things, but she struggles publicly.
Yeah, she's probably a very nice lady.
Probably is. I listened to a show, Reasonable Doubt, Adam Carolla and Mark Garagos, and Mark Garagos knows her and always vouches for her intelligence. And I'm going to take his word for it because Garagos is one of the most intelligent people that I ever listened to. So I'm going to trust him here. But she doesn't come across that way publicly.
Yeah, I mean, she has to be somewhat smart. She was Attorney General of California, U.S. Senator of California, passed the vetting process to be vice president, the nominee. But you're right. She comes across as aloof, goofy, knows nothing about policy, doesn't want to take things serious. That's how she comes across. Those are not the best characteristics if you want to be president of the United States one day.
Right. So they can't run her because I think internally they probably would go, even they probably would admit begrudgingly that she's not electable.
Yeah.
Does he take her off the ticket knowing that his age at 82 is going to be an even bigger deal than it was at 78 and put someone who is more palatable on the ticket? Or is that a big political risk?
I think so. You're going to remove the first ever female vice president in the history of the country, first ever African-American vice president in the history of the country. It's a big political risk. I don't know. I wouldn't think so. I really wouldn't. Why do you want to rock the boat like that?
I agree with you. I just was curious.
I mean, it's a good question to ask. It's good hypothetical, but I couldn't. Hell, man, I didn't think he was going to run again either, though. Just didn't think he would be at this point.
So here he is, Joe Biden. Let's, and I don't want anything to happen to the man. Let's assume that his health holds steady where it is today, and he runs as basically who he is today, with Kamala Harris as his running mate. Obviously, the intrigue and the fascination is on the Republican Party. To this point, Ron DeSantis hasn't made an announcement. Donald Trump has. He's running. Donald Trump, he says he's running. He's attacking Ron DeSantis publicly with this Ron DeSanctimonious stuff that he does. Went after him as recently as Tuesday.
Yeah.
What in the world is happening with the Republican Party from the top of the top of the party? And I'm being roundabout here, but I saw a survey, and I can't remember where it was. Maybe it was Wall Street Journal, New York Times. It was something along those lines. It was 28% of the people who vote for Trump, who would vote for Trump in a hypothetical election, say they would vote for him as a third party. They're so enamored with Trump. Trump remains this giant problem for the Republican Party going into 2024.
Yeah, and I think the way that you describe it as a problem is true, because he's the only candidate that we have that is an energy. This is super important. Listen, anything I say, listen to this. He is an energizing factor for turnout for the Democrat Party base.
Yes, yes.
Not only their base, but just the common voter who may or may not always go vote every presidential election. Those are the hardest voters to get out. We usually call them one of fours. Basically means, well, they voted in, one primary or one election over the last 4 years.
Those are the people that if anything happens on that day that interferes at all, they're like, screw it. I'm not doing that. I have a headache. Yeah. Little Johnny's got a game.
It's cold.
It's cold. It might rain. My car's running on empty.
But Trump is the one who motivates those people to go out because they just don't like him. Am I surprised that there's 28% of those of Republican primary voters who were polled who said they'd vote for him no matter what? No, I'm not surprised. Dude has a loyal following. He really does. I think he's got a hard ceiling. Look, he had a hard ceiling on him in 2016 in the primary, but there were so many candidates. And look, he had not done all the good things and bad things, the bad things that work against you when you're running against a field. Those hadn't happened yet in 2016, but he was able to survive and get a plurality versus a majority. And I just think this field is setting up this time to not allow him to have that opportunity. There's no question Governor DeSantis is the top candidate to challenge him. Look, I'd be willing to bet whatever you want to bet that DeSantis is going to run for president.
Okay.
He's already got a super PAC that started. I know the folks that are involved in his super PAC. They are top-notch, top-flight political operatives, really smart people. He's going to have a really good team around him. But he won't be the only one. Nikki Haley has gotten in, former governor of South Carolina, former UN ambassador. What's her title? Like UN ambassador for the United States. Really smart lady. Took some tough stances on things that weren't popular with Republican voters in South Carolina. Social issues. I think she's got a tough road, but she's running. And I think there'll be 2 or 3 or 4 other serious individuals who would get in that race outside of DeSantis. So you may see a field of 4 to 6 former current governors or U.S. senators who are in that race. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be 2 long shot governors that nobody's ever heard of, 2 members, current members or former members of Congress who are running, but they don't have a serious chance.
What about DeSantis? What do you think of him as a candidate?
I think that when you win Florida by 19 points, and he may have got to 20. Florida, Neil. I mean, how many
Yeah.
times have we watched you and I watching election night returns, presidential elections? Of course, we go back to 2000 when it was the closest race ever there and go, man, that state, if there's ever such thing as a purple state, it is Florida. Democrats win it sometimes, Republicans win it. He beat Charlie Crist. Charlie Crist, who was a former governor, been elected to a lot of things. They're very well known, universal name idea in Florida. He beat the hell out of it.
4 years after barely winning.
4 years after barely meeting the African American mayor of Tallahassee. Look, he's a formidable candidate who's going to have he already has all the money in the world in his campaign conferences. He's going to have whatever he needs. Republican, I think the establishment donor community is going to get behind him just like they did Jeb Bush in 2016. Remember, Jeb had $100+ million in 2016. He just met a force from Donald Trump that he just wasn't willing to stand up to, couldn't stand up to, wasn't in his DNA. And I think that's the difference. I think DeSantis will, and is prepared to do that. Is prepared to stand up to him.
Oh, that's fascinating you say it that way. When you say didn't stand up to him, what do you kind of mean?
So if you remember the early debates and when Trump would call him low energy Jeb and all those things, he was being Trump. So Trump has been very good. Little Marco Rubio. He had all these nicknames where he just demonized whoever it was that he was running against, but did it in a way that seemed like he was joking, but also punching him right in the nose. And, back then people thought, oh, yeah, I love this. It's refreshing. He's telling it like it is. And then Jeb would just kind of sit over there and he wouldn't punch back. Chris Christie would go throw haymakers with him, but Chris Christie wasn't electable at that point in time. But Jeb just couldn't withstand it, didn't push back. That's what I mean. He was not a brawler. Like I think
Jeb Bush. I met Jeb Bush through you, if I recall correctly. He was in Starkville before Nagel. If he had a do-over, and life doesn't often bring do-overs, but if he had a do-over, would he have fought back?
I don't know. He's not like his brother. And I'm a big fan of the Bush family. I just am. I think they're good people. But George W. had that Texas swagger in him. Remember the Al Gore general election debate when Bush had won the first debate, and then in the second one, I believe, or it was the third one, the Gore strategy was you got to get over there and get up in George Bush's face. You can't let him run you around this. And if you'll remember, Gore literally walked over to the podium like he was going to fight Bush, and George W. said, basically, like, "What's up? How you doing?" He made him look like a fool.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Had that swagger, smartassness in him that just made Gore look like an idiot. So I think George W. would have been able to probably handle Trump better than his brother Jeb, if that makes sense.
It does. So what you're saying is that you believe DeSantis in a debate setting when Trump calls him Ron DeSanctimonious and when Trump tries to find his little jabs, you think DeSantis, who seems to be the type, like you mentioned, like I've watched him in press interactions and such, where he'll go after people that he thinks are wrong, and you think he takes on,
he's fiery.
He'll take on the former president of the United States in that setting?
Well, he better or he'll lose. But I was thinking the exact same examples as you are. Early in DeSantis's term, he had a press conference that I swear it was like an airplane hangar or something, wide open setting, and he was going after several members of the press about something that he just thought was wrong. And he's certainly been willing to go after Disney and all these huge entities in the state of Florida. And I don't know about the policy and politics of all those, but dude's not scared to go after people. And I think that's what it takes if you're going to survive, an election challenge from Donald Trump.
We've seen in the past, I guess it was George H.W. Bush when he was the incumbent president running against Bill Clinton, who at the time was the governor of Arkansas. Ross Perot as a third party. Perot didn't win, but he certainly impacted that election. Does Donald Trump, in your opinion, have it in him to concede, or does he run as an independent? And if that were to happen, how do you anticipate that impacting a presidential election that's a year and a half out?
Such a great question, with so many answers. I'll try not to be long-winded here.
No,
First of
go
all,
for it.
Trump doesn't want to lose again because he lost in 2020, and people can say whatever they want. I actually, because I thought we'd get to this conversation, I went back and looked at the numbers from 2020. He lost, Georgia by less than 20,000 votes, Arizona by about the same number, maybe it was less than 10,000. Wisconsin, he lost by less than 10,000. Pennsylvania, he lost by a lot, 80 to 100,000. But he still lost the election. I mean, that's how we do this in America, is through the Electoral College. And he still got, I think, 8 million less votes, 6.5 million less votes than Biden. So even though he likes to say he didn't lose, that he won twice, the records say differently. I don't think the man wants to lose again. Okay. He's not going to become president of the United States unless he's the Republican nominee. So,
Fact. Yep.
Fact.
Yep.
Okay. Just fact. Ask Teddy Roosevelt about that. It's not going to happen. So Neil, I just don't think he would say, screw it, I'm so angry, I'm going to run as an independent, only because he just knows he knows he can't win that way. So why go put yourself through that? Why have people say, well, you lost again? I just don't see that happening. Look, you and I having this honest conversation. I don't know if he would be willing to stick it through in a primary with DeSantis if he thought he was going to lose to DeSantis. I mean, he won in 2016. He's a president of the United States.
Yeah, he's got 45's his forever. Yeah.
Absolutely. You're never taking that away from him. And then do you want to come back and run in a primary where you lose to a guy that you thought was sort of part of your coaching tree? Man, I don't know about that. I think Trump got in real early because he wanted to freeze the field. He wanted to energize his base. But we'll have to see if we're heading into the Iowa caucuses and DeSantis is doing well, and then here comes New Hampshire right after that, and poll numbers in October and November and December of this year are just saying, oh, here goes DeSantis, he's going to win it. And then if he wins a couple of those, I don't think Trump stays in this for a long time.
I don't. Deep down, I question whether he has the ability to be magnanimous, because he's yet to be magnanimous.
You know the answer to that.
Does he have the ability to just swing his support behind DeSantis or Haley or whoever begins to
maybe he could give him the benefit of the doubt on that a little bit. Maybe he says, oh, well, DeSantis is going to become president, or Nikki Haley's going to become president, or Neil McCarthy's become president because I gave them my MAGA group to them.
Is he willing to be a kingmaker and not the king?
Yeah.
That's the question. And I don't know the answer to that yet. Here's the problem it's a country problem for me and you've got young people in your house that you love, that you care for. You're worried about their futures. You see what's happening in our country with the vitriol and all the things that are happening and our debt and all the stuff. What I don't want for our country, this is the part of me that's not partisan. I don't want a repeat election where Donald Trump runs on, I really won in 2020, but it got stolen. There's just no evidence that the election, was the exact count right? Of course not. Were there some stuff that probably happened here and there? Sure. Yeah. But was it systemic fraud that stripped him of the presidency? I can't go there. There's no evidence to support that. And so I'd rather an election be run with, in this case, a sitting governor of the state of Florida who handled COVID and all of that completely differently than Trump, than Biden, who said, this is the way that you do it. This is my leadership record against your leadership record. This isn't about the 2020 election. This is about the 2024 election. This isn't about the past. This is about the future. I'd much rather see that election. And then Let
That's
the
what
chips
America
fall where they
needs.
may.
America needs a debate on ideals. America needs a debate on policy issues that matter to us. I mean, we need to have a real debate on what's going on at the border. Okay, it may not be your number one issue. It's not my number one issue, but it's right up there. When
It's
you
up
start
there.
looking, there are 4 or 5 million people who have crossed the border illegally since Joe Biden took office. And we as Republicans need to come forth with this is our plan for how we fix this. And Democrats need to come forward with this is our plan for whether we leave it like this because we think it's the right thing to do, which clearly Joe Biden does, or we have a different idea. We need to be talking about those things: education, infrastructure, healthcare, taxes, Ukraine, China, Russia, things that really effing matter. If we have a repeat of 20 and 24, it's going to all be about I won, no, I won. I won. America does not need that from two gentlemen who are, one will be over. I think they'll both be over 80 that year. As Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who's the youngest governor in America right now, who's the governor of Arkansas, said, it's time for the next generation of leaders to move forward. And I believe that for the Republican Party as well.
Did they pick her to give that speech so that she, a person who was in the Trump White House, was a big part of the Trump White House, would say that maybe as a message to him?
I had no idea, but man, maybe I don't know that. I think it's sort of like a double entendre. It's certainly a message to Biden, but maybe it's a message to our own party as well.
Kind of what I
So
wonder, because you always are going to get, if it's a Republican that gives the State of the Union, the Democrats are going to come back and tell you where all of it's wrong and where they have a better vision, and vice versa. I just thought it was interesting last night that here's Sarah Sanders, who just won in November, won handedly in a very red state, and she ran a terrific campaign from everything I've heard, and she's a charismatic person.
yes,
Women like her. She's very bright. But you don't look at Sarah Sanders today and go, she's going to be in the presidential field in a year, because she's not.
no,
I don't
she's
even
not.
I don't even think she's on the short bench of who might be a running mate. So I thought it was an interesting choice that she would do that, and that one of her messages would be, hey, it's time to turn the page, if you will. It's time to let the next guy come in and play quarterback. And I thought, boy, who's that directed to?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. She obviously has a very bright future. Um, but I just think it's so important. I wrote a column that was published in a new entity that started in Mississippi, talking about what should Republicans. It was a point counterpoint. I wrote it, the Republican side, and a Democrat state senator from
This is the
Greenville,
Magnolia Tribune. Is that what you're?
Magnolia Tribune. Yeah.
Yep.
Wasn't sure if I could mention other public.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. And what I was tasked to do was to write about what should Republicans be talking about in Mississippi in 2023. And I just wrote about, look, Republicans should be bold, but Republicans should be bold on ideals, policy ideals, okay? Things that matter. We've got this great history, I think, over the last 20 years in Mississippi of things that we've been very successful on: education, infrastructure. Yeah, but Tate Reeves, who is a friend, opened Mississippi up as fast as any governor did with COVID. He balanced the healthcare concerns, but he was also thinking very, very, very much so about small businesses in Mississippi and their survival. And there are big things that we've done in Mississippi as Republicans and as conservatives that are good for our state, good for the future of our state, that we should be talking about, but also saying, we've done this, let's do this next. That is big and bold. Okay. That doesn't mean you're always going to be successful. When you sometimes swing for the fence, but with a calculated plan, sometimes you're going to miss. But if we have this conversation that is nothing but about politics, and I don't like you and you don't like me, and that's all that matters, and that's how we're going to get people to the polls, we are never going to fix our country. Look, I think I'd probably be a terrible candidate these days if I ran for office. because I'm not willing to go say, well, I just don't like you because you're a Democrat. Now, I'm probably going to disagree with that Democrat a lot, but that doesn't mean I can't be their friend. That doesn't mean I can't try to work with them to get the most conservative possible agreement, consensus that I possibly could. But our politics are so screwed up because in many ways, both the left and the right, the far corners of each of those are and they're the minority of both parties. They are the ones that are the most vocal, the most on Facebook, the most on Twitter. And in many ways, they are guiding our politics right now, which I'm not a big fan of. Sorry, I was a little long-winded there, Neil.
No, but it got me to my next question. Is that reparable? Is that just where we are? Is this cyclical? Is there a way? I always go back to this. I always think back to, and I'm sure that these people had their moments, right? But I always kind of think back to when I was a kid and Ronald Reagan ran for president. He defeated Jimmy Carter. And I don't know if you remember this, but I do. I was like 12. And Jimmy Carter was doing the groundbreaking for his presidential library. And he got President Reagan at the time to come deliver the speech. And he did. He delivered this magnanimous speech about Jimmy Carter, the former president at the time. And these are two men that had run a campaign against each other. And as you know, presidential campaigns are going to be bitter at some point. The stakes are so high.
Yeah.
Rhetoric is going to get ratcheted up, and it's just going to happen. And yet there was a gentlemanly thing about it. We've seen it in recent years with President Clinton inviting his former political rival to come help, and they became great friends. And we've seen them at funerals and things. And then we just got through with the cycle where the sitting president didn't go to the inauguration, which was something they'd always done. He kind of broke from that. And we have this just nasty, if you turn on Fox News, if you turn on CNBC or whatever the case may be, I mean, everybody's just, it's so vitriolic and so nasty. And it feels like that has permeated every corner of kind of our society a little bit. I'm curious whether you think that's fixable, or is that just who we are now?
I'm looking at my phone because you and I have both listened to this podcast. Oh gosh, that comment. Now I got to find the name of it. American Elections Wicked Game, where they do like a 30 or 45 minute of every presidential election in history of our country. And in the 1800s, they had some wicked ones. Okay,
Yeah,
they had some battles where they were, saying all kinds of stuff. So this is nothing new. Man, I gotta think it's somewhat cyclical. Okay, I just have to think, who is it that is the leader of the Republican Party and the Democrat Party at that time? What's their personality? I mean, Trump is bombastic. He is a flamethrower. He is going to come at you with knives out. That has been sort of, I mean, he's, been the leader of the Republican Party. Does that change in 24 and 28 as we have potentially new nominees there? What just sort of the same for Biden? Does it change for them? I hope so. I hope we can get back to a little normalcy. Again, I've said this, and I won't say it again. Won't belabor the point. I think we need to be talking about policy ideals that make America better. And the same in Mississippi. I have sort of gotten to the point where, man, I think I should really try to focus as much on my community. And I live in Jackson, and boy, does it need a lot of help. And my state, that I can do more with my few abilities to help Mississippi and Jackson more than anything. Because national politics is really, just gotten so ugly. But of course, we're not, because we love, national politics because it matters so much.
Well, you mentioned the state. Tate Reeves will run for re-election, presumably. Is there a challenge for him? Is it going to be more difficult for him this time around? And there's always an assumption that it's a foregone conclusion that Republicans will win the governor's seat, the governor's mansion there. What do you anticipate?
Look, he's definitely the front runner. Brandon Presley, who is the Northern District Public Service Commissioner. We'll get that out. Former mayor of Nettleton, Mississippi. Brandon is going to be the Democrat nominee. He's going to be well funded. He's a lot in the mold of Jim Hood, sort of the Northeast Mississippi rural white populist kind of candidate. Um, will he be as well funded as Jim Hood? I don't know. Brandon is much more likable than Jim Hood, but Tate Reeves has got an extremely good track record of things that he can talk about, from jobs to reopening after reopening Mississippi as quickly as anywhere in the country during COVID, and a number of other things that he's been able to do. I always say this about Tate, and Tate has been a friend for, since 2003 when he first ran. That's when I first got to meet Tate when he ran for treasurer. He has always been very much the underdog in every race. Everybody thinks, oh, he's not going to win. Whether it was his first race in '03, when he was in a three-way primary, Republican primary, till winning that, to winning the general election, to winning lieutenant governor, to winning governor. And he had a tough primary against Bill Waller in 2019. Tate's going to win again. He's not going to win by 10 or 12 points, I don't think. He may, but it'll be a reasonably close race. But I think Tate will win. He doesn't have a primary opponent of any substance. So, but Presley, I believe, will be well funded. Look, what would be great for Joe Biden is if a Democrat won Mississippi in 2023. That would show, oh, the country is changing. Republicans have no momentum. Biden came into Mississippi and helped Brandon Presley win, but that's not going to happen. They're going to try, but I don't foresee that happening.
You mentioned Jackson. We didn't even talk about this before, but I'm curious. How concerned are you for the future of your city?
Very concerned. Of course, and Jackson's it's where I'm raising my kids. I'm sure you look at Oxford much the same way. It's where you've raised your three kids after y'all moved from not Mobile. What was the little town that y'all lived in?
Not so little anymore. We were in Spanish Fort when we right across the bay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Deidre and I have lived here for just about 20 years, about our whole marriage. The area that we live in by our school is kind of like a small town. I never thought I'd raise my kids here. But that sort of Northeast Jackson is sort of its own little small town inside of a big town. But I am very worried about the future of Jackson. I mean, the local leadership is not focused on things that matter. Look, it's pretty simple in Jackson. If you focus on crime and you focus on infrastructure, just those two things right there, paving the streets and providing running water that people can actually drink and use, and you focus on crime, having enough police officers, supporting them, having a real jail, and locking people up, you can go a long way towards just stabilizing Jackson. The Fondren area, I'm not sure how much time you spent in Jackson, is doing really well. There are parts of Jackson that are doing better. State Street is Capitol Street towards State Street, starting to come back a little bit. The One Lake project, which would totally revitalize Jackson, to bring sort of mixed use housing, residential, commercial, right off sort of I-55 would be a tremendous boost for Jackson. But we've just got leadership there that's only focused on their own politics, I hate to say, and are not focused on the things that really matter. Whether you're white or you're black or you're Hispanic or you're rich or poor, no matter what part of Jackson you care about, you live in, if you can just have the bad guys off the street and you can have streets that you can drive on and you can have clean running water, damn. Those three things you would think are pretty simple, but we've struggled with that.
Yeah, you would think that would be pretty basic stuff, and yet it's almost impossible for someone to run a campaign on those things and win.
I know, but let me say this: Jackson is our capital city. Whether you're from Oxford or Okolona or Ocean Springs, Jackson is our capital city. So we can't just give up on it. Mm-hmm. We can't just say screw it. We have to try to do what we can. And I will say, the legislature and the governor are focused on it. And I'm not going to get into the nuances because nobody listening to this really cares unless you live in Jackson. But there are things that are being done to try to make Jackson, give it the opportunity to rebound from, I think, its floor of where it is right now.
Yeah, and you got to find a way to bring jobs to places. You got to find a way, and that's so complicated, right? Because you got to go out and recruit people to bring jobs, and they come in and look at something and go, wait a minute, the crime's bad. The streets are terrible and there's no running water. Why would we go there?
But even if the job's located in Clinton, or the job's located in Madison County or Rankin County or Bolton that's fine. It's a 15-20 minute commute. You can still live in Jackson if you want, black or white, rich or poor, and drive to that job. So you're right. Having jobs in Metro Jackson is extremely important. They don't necessarily have to be within the city limits. It would be helpful to improve the tax base. But anyway.
Hey, as always, I really appreciate the time. I think you're terrific at what you do. I love your ability to give analysis. I know you come from one side of the field, but I always feel like it's a fair shake. So, and I know there will be
Well,
people who
always.
disagree, and that's okay.
That's okay. Look, that's what makes America great is we can disagree, and but that's okay. Hey man, I greatly enjoy talking to you as always. Tell Chase hello and look forward to doing this again.
I will. Thanks so much. I'll